Alright viewers, today I'm at Brybrook, going to check some sheep, do a worm test, drench a couple of little hoggets, and yeah, that's about it for today. So what we're doing here is just checking these hoggets in front of me here. Just move them into the next paddock. Come out of that, dog. They're in pretty good order, there's no worries about them. Come here, dog. Okay, so I'll bring those wethers in. In here there's a couple of young sheep that I need to drench. They just, ordinarily that's not what you do, but that's what we're going to have to do this time. There's a couple that have got slightly shitty bums, but I can't see anything fly struck, so that's a pretty good sign. Come here, Pud. Come behind. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come out of that! Wonka, come behind. Come out of that. Come out of it. Come behind. Today we're just going to drench a few of these rams and stags that are in this mob. We pulled the rams and stags out of the hoggets because there was a chance that they could get the ewe lambs in lamb, and we certainly didn't want that. So they've been running with these wethers for a while, and because they were pulled out of the other mob, they missed the dose that the other mob got, so we're going to just dose them. And the dog hasn't been behaving, driving me mad. But anyway, problem is that she doesn't get enough work, so she just wants to run the sheep around like mad, which is not what we want to have happen. So these sheep are in pretty good nick. Might even do a little bit of condition scoring on them, just to get a bit of an idea of where they're sitting. I won't actually record it, but I'll just run my hands over them. Don't need to condition score off. Look at him, big fat toad off. Right, better get on with it. What have you been up to, you silly dog? You haven't covered yourself in glory, have you? Eh? Oh, pretty dog. You've been running around like a mad thing. Just not enough work. That's your problem. Drive me mad, eh? Yes, you drive me mad, you silly thing. So I'm going to drench these half a dozen hoggets with 10 mils of tridectin. So in order to make sure I deliver the 10 mils, I'm going to calibrate the gun, make sure it's actually delivering 10 mils. So I'll give it 10 squirts in here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's a little bit over 100 mils. So I'll just back that off a little bit and give it another go. 8, 9, 10. So that's pretty close to 100 mils. I think that's good enough for today's job, so we'll carry on with that. Something like that, when you see it in the paddock, you would tend to view that with a fair bit of suspicion, but it's actually not struck. But I'll give these rams a bit of click, and you can see these wrinkles here. You really don't want them, so we won't be breeding from this fella. we won't be keeping him. And you can see here the issues with the shearing cuts and whatnot. But that I thought might have been a bit of strike, but it's just a bit of poo. Same with this bloke here. Okay, so we're just giving those rams a bit of click. A bit on the bum, a bit on the back of the head, and the pole, in case they start fighting. Right, that was the quickest job on the planet. So there was only half a dozen or so in there of the hoggets that I had to do. So that's done. I'll take them back to the paddock and then I'll go up there and open a gate up there. Just have another look at that mob of hoggets and take some poo samples and take them home and test them, and that'll be it for a Saturday. Bit of a goof off really. Rightio, so by far and away the biggest animal health issue that we have is Barbers Pole Worm, worms in general. So I'm going to take a worm sample, take it home, Sarah can count it up in the microscope. Right, got to get some of this lovely fresh poo. Yeah, that's a lovely job, isn't it? Hey? Got to try and get the samples the same size. Isn't that beautiful? Now I need about 20 samples, and while I'm filming I'm probably going to manage to lose count, but at any rate that's 4, 15, one more will do us today, that's 20, right, job's right. So Barbers Pole is definitely our biggest animal health issue. The problem with Barbers Pole is that it comes on so quickly, so on warm moist conditions they can go from sort of virtually no Barbers Pole to enough to kill them in about 3 or 4 weeks. So you do have to be very, very careful, and unlike other worms, it's not just a thrift issue, it's the fact that it kills them, you know. So we're very conscious of it. What we do is we do these worm samples and we measure it. Now, if the count's below 1,000, you don't really have to worry about treatment. That's 1,000 eggs per gram, you don't have to worry about treatment. But over 1,000 eggs per gram, the recommendation is that you treat them. Now, we think that there's different types of Barbers Pole, and that ours might not be quite as aggressive. You could probably go slightly higher worm counts, when we certainly have, with no ill effects at different times. In fact, we've had worm counts up to 4,000 or 5,000, and we haven't had any deaths out of that. Anyway, the point about worm counts is that you can measure it. Back in the old days, you couldn't measure it. It was by guess and by God. One of the techniques was that you'd run the sheep with a dog behind them for a little bit and see which ones dropped behind, and or you could tell if there was bottly jaws, or indeed they would start dropping dead. Now, the other thing that's helped us with Barbers Pole control is Barbavax. It's a vaccine that was developed by the Morden Institute in Scotland. I'm not quite sure, there's some input from some people in Western Australia as well. The Scottish farmers have a lot of trouble with other types of worms, roundworm and stomach worm and all those kind of worms, and they were trying to develop a vaccine for that. The vaccine that they developed worked on Barbers Pole, but it didn't work on the other worms, or they haven't been able to develop one for the other worms. So fortunately for us here in Australia, especially in the New England area, we've had the benefit of that Scottish research. It's been a bit of a game changer for us. Previously we relied on drenches, and over time the worms developed resistance to drench. And so there'd be a successive, as each new generation came out, drench would work for a while, maybe 5 or 10 years, and then it would, the worms would become resistant, and we were back to where we started. So we were just about out of drenches, and the vaccine came along, and there were certainly some producers that went out of business due to the Barbers Pole worm. They just changed to another enterprise such as cattle. But with the Barbavax and a few other worm management strategies as well, we found that we're managing it quite well at the moment.